ever feel like, I don't know, there are these invisible forces kind of shaping the world around us?
Yeah.
Forces we don't really understand, but we definitely feel the impact.
It's easy to feel that way, yeah,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with something like, as complex as the military-industrial complex.
Exactly. And that is exactly what we were diving into today
Okay.
with this 2024 paper. The military-industrial complex as a variety of capitalism and threat to democracy.
Right.
We're really going to try to unpack how this whole thing works,
Okay.
why it matters,
Yeah.
and what it means for, honestly, you and me.
It's a dense one.
It is. It is.
I'll give you that.
That's why you're here.
Packed with insights, though.
All right, so the paper kicks off with this classic idea of guns versus butter, which I have to admit, like, I always thought that was just about,
Yeah.
choosing between tanks or hospitals.
Well, yeah, I mean, on a basic level it is.
Right.
Countries have limited resources, right?
Right.
But the paper takes it a little bit further with this, I think, fascinating comparison to the prisoner's dilemma. Are
Okay.
you familiar with that?
Vaguely, it's like a logic puzzle, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So imagine two suspects, right?
Okay.
Each is offered a deal. Betray the other suspect and you go free while they get a heavy sentence.
Okay.
But if you both stay silent, you both get off light.
Right.
The catch is you can't talk to each other.
Oh!
So you're just stuck guessing.
I see where this is going, yeah.
Right. The best outcome is cooperation.
Right.
But that fear and self-interest kind of push them towards betraying each other, leading to a worse outcome for both. And so the paper argues that arms races work the same way. Countries get caught in this spiral of, well, we have to boost our defense spending,
Right.
thinking they're increasing their security. But if everyone's doing it, are they really any safer?
Right. And meanwhile, they're sacrificing all of the,
Exactly.
spending on all the things that could make their people's lives better.
Yeah.
The butter in this scenario.
A butter, exactly. It's like a high stakes game of chicken
Yes.
with their defense budgets. And then so that's where military Keynesianism comes in.
Okay.
The paper suggests that military spending can act like a stimulus package, right?
Okay.
Boosting the economy
Right.
through jobs, investment.
So more jobs, more money flowing around.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good thing.
On the surface, yeah,
I
maybe.
have to say.
But a paper's asking us to think critically here. Is it the right kind of boost?
Right. Right.
What if those resources went into education, infrastructure, green energy?
Right.
Would that lead to a more sustainable growth, a more resilient society,
It's that opportunity cost.
Exactly.
Where does that money go?
It's not just tanks and planes anymore, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's so much more.
The paper argues that the MIC is also really deeply intertwined with technological innovation.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting,
Right.
especially for, our tech-savvy listeners.
Yeah.
Your smartphone,
Right.
the internet, even some life-saving medical technologies, these might not exist without the research and development funded by the MIC.
So we're all, in a way, benefiting from the MIC,
Right.
whether we realize it or not.
To some extent, yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue that there hasn't been some benefit,
Right.
but the paper challenges us to ask, at what cost?
Right.
And is this the most efficient and ethical way to drive technological progress?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leaves us to kind of like this next layer of the MIC. How does this economic engine actually operate when it comes to war itself?
Yeah.
So we've talked about the MIC as this economic force,
Right.
but the paper, it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
It actually dives into how this engine of guns, butter, tech
Right.
actually operates when it comes to war.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting
Okay.
because, I think a lot of people, they hear military-industrial complex and they think, okay, this is about, supplying weapons,
Yeah.
meeting the demand for defense.
We need to protect ourselves, so we need these companies to,
Exactly.
hack this stuff.
Exactly. And the paper is arguing that it's not just about passively meeting demand.
Okay.
It's that the MIC is actually incentivized to increase the demand.
Wait, so it's not enough to just,
Right.
have enough weapons to defend the country or where
Right.
they actually benefit from a world where
Yeah.
there's more need for those weapons.
That's exactly what the people's suggesting.
Wow.
Think about it. If you're a company making fighter jets,
Right.
a peaceful world,
Yeah.
not exactly good for business, right?
It's such a chilling thought, honestly.
It is. It's kind of a dark reality.
Yeah.
But the paper kind of, encourages us to really grapple with that.
But how does that actually
Yeah.
play out
Right.
in the real world?
So the paper argues that the MIC has a vested interest in shaping the way
Okay.
that politicians and really the public at large
Okay.
thinks about war itself.
So it's not just like lobbyists going to,
Right.
Congress people and being like,
Sure.
we need a bigger budget, although I'm sure that still happens.
Oh, absolutely. But it goes deeper. It goes deeper than that.
Okay.
The paper talks about how the MIC influences the way we assess the costs and benefits
Interesting.
of going to war.
So making war seem like a more palatable option.
In a way, yeah, the paper, it connects this to the work of Karl von Clausewitz. He was, a famous military theorist.
Right. Vaguely remember that name from
Yeah.
history class.
He said, war is a continuation of politics by other means.
Right.
And the paper's arguing that the MIC has further blurred that line,
Oh, yeah.
making war almost an extension of economics.
Interesting.
And this is where America's unique global position comes into play.
You mean like being a superpower?
Being a superpower, exactly. Having, oceans on both sides.
Right, right.
The paper argues that the U.S. can wage war in a way that many other countries can't.
Right.
Think about it. We have this ability to, project power globally,
Yeah.
engage in, what they call proxy wars,
Right.
and generally avoid the kind of, devastation on our own soil
Yeah.
that other nations face when they go to war with each other.
It's true. Yeah. The U.S. has not experienced a major war
Right.
within its own borders.
Right.
It's a very long time.
And that relative safety,
Right.
according to the paper, has a huge impact on how the MIC operates.
Okay.
Because if the cost of war, in terms of
Right.
damage to American lives and property
Yeah.
are perceived as lower,
Yeah.
it might make those in power
Yeah.
more likely to see it as a viable option.
So it's almost like we're playing a different game than everybody else.
It's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
It really is. And it raises, I think, some really important questions about
Yeah.
responsibility, accountability, and, whether the true cost of war
Right.
is ever fully understood by those making the decisions.
The people in power.
Yeah, exactly. And us, the public.
Which leads us to the part of this paper I find honestly like the most unsettling,
Yeah, okay.
which is how the MIC influences not just like our physical world, but also our minds. It's like we talk about the business of war, right?
Yeah.
But this paper really makes it clear
Yes.
that it's not just about like weapons and contracts and stuff.
Yeah.
It's about shaping how we think.
Exactly. This is where the paper gets into the really, insidious stuff, I think.
Okay.
How the MIC influences our perceptions, our beliefs about the world.
So are we talking like straight up propaganda
Right.
trying to convince us that we need to be afraid all the time?
Well,
Spend more on defense.
it's more subtle than just straight up propaganda.
Okay.
The paper calls it capture beyond cash. Right. It's about influencing politicians, the media, even academics in ways that go beyond just handing out money.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Give me some examples. Like,
Sure.
how does capture beyond cash actually work?
Think about think tanks, right?
Okay. Yeah.
They sound kind of official and independent, maybe, right?
Right.
But many of them are funded by defense contractors.
Oh, interesting.
And those contractors have a vested interest in promoting certain narratives, right? That we live in a dangerous world, that we need a strong military, that, these certain countries are our enemies.
So it's like they're shaping the conversation before it even begins.
Exactly. And then there's the media.
Right. Of course.
Right. You see it all the time, news reports about, whatever the threat of the day is.
Yeah.
That conveniently requires a military solution. And often those reports rely on these so-called experts who, surprise, surprise, have ties to the defense industry.
It's amazing how easy we can be manipulated when we don't know where the information is coming from.
And that's exactly the point the paper's making.
Right.
If we're not even aware of how our perceptions are being shaped, how can we make truly informed decisions
Right.
about things like military spending, about foreign policy, even about our own values?
Yeah. It's honestly kind of terrifying when you really start to think about it.
It's a bit of a rabbit hole.
It is. It's like we're constantly being bombarded with all these messages that are reinforcing this idea. Like, we need this thing, we need the MIC to keep us safe. But what if that very system is actually making us less safe in the long run?
Right.
Right.
Well, and
By perpetuating this cycle of fear and militarization.
that's the big question the paper leaves us with, right?
Yeah.
It's this uncomfortable paradox The MIC is supposed to protect our freedom, but as we've discussed, it can also erode those very freedoms in the name of security.
It's like that classic saying, right? Like,
Yeah.
those who would sacrifice liberty for security deserve neither.
Exactly, and this goes way beyond just the military, right?
Right.
The paper argues that the MIC is a model, it's like a blueprint for how other powerful industries operate.
You mean like big pharma, big tech, all that?
Exactly. They all have these complex relationships with government, with media, with the public. They all engage in this dance of shaping narratives, of influencing policy, often to the detriment of the common good,
Yeah.
you know?
So what can we do about it? Like, if these forces are so pervasive,
Yeah.
how can we as individuals even begin to, like, challenge that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, and the paper doesn't offer any easy answers, but it does, I think, give us a starting point.
Okay.
And it all begins with awareness.
Right.
Understanding how these systems operate, that's the first step towards actually challenging them.
It's like that old saying, knowledge is power.
Exactly. We need to be critical consumers of information.
Yeah.
You know, who's funding that think tank?
Right.
What are the biases of that news source? Who benefits from this particular policy decision, you know?
Right.
Asking those questions can help us, I think, see through the fog of misinformation and make more informed choices.
This has been a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this whole thing.
It's a huge topic.
It's huge. What would you say, like, as we're kind of wrapping up here, what's like the most important thing for our listeners to take away from this whole deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the MIC, it's not some abstract entity, you know.
Right.
It's a reflection of our choices.
Oh, wow.
It's a reflection of our priorities, of our values as a society, and it's up to us to decide, I think, what kind of world we want to live in, you know. One that's driven by fear and militarization, or one that prioritizes peace, justice, and human well-being.
That's a powerful message to end on. It's been a deep dive in every sense of the word.
It has.
We'll be sure to link to the paper we discussed in our show notes so you can explore these ideas further. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.